we are not meant to hold other people's emotional responses. If we are making a decision or setting a boundary in integrity, in our truth, we can do it respectfully, right? It is not our responsibility to hold someone else's emotional response. Hey beautiful, welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self-awakening journey. This is your weekly sanctuary for waking up from autopilot and transforming the way you approach life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It is my mission to help you heal unprocessed emotions and release stuck energies by alchemizing your struggle cycles into opportunities for deep self-love, awareness, trust, and connection, to return to your innate essence of being, stepping back into your energy of alignment. Because here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light, embodying all parts that make you, you. So if you are ready to get to the root of cultivating real change, get cozy, grab your journal and maybe favorite crystals, and let's discover our power within together. What is up? Welcome back to another episode of the Naturally Empowered Living podcast. This is your host, guide, and mentor in all things energetics, emotions, and self-awakening, Jenna Smith. And before we dive into today's episode, I want to acknowledge that this month, May, is Mental Health Awareness Month. And while mental health conversations and just talking about it and mental health in general, it's becoming more common and normalized, which is deeply important. Like, we need to keep this conversation going. Like, there's space for us to continue forward and growing and to go deeper. Always go deeper. Because mental health isn't just about managing symptoms and what's visible possibly on the outside, or you're seeing this diagnosis. It's not just about coping and finding, coping strategies for that either. Because sometimes when we bring awareness to exploring those patterns underneath the anxiety, the depression, the dissociation, the burnout, the people-pleasing, the emotional exhaustion or detachment, the guilt, the PTSD, the CPTSD, like, we may have been carrying these diagnoses for years. But also to become curious, not just about what these diagnoses are or say or the signs or the symptoms, but truly connecting to what we feel. Like, why certain emotional patterns live within us in the first place. Like, this month can be an invitation for that curiosity. Yes, to raise awareness around mental health, but also to deepen the awareness around what's underneath. The why, the how, the nervous system patterns, the survival responses, the unresolved emotional roots that shape so much of how we experience ourselves and our perception of our realities. Awareness is powerful. And root level healing is where true freedom begins. So today, I want to talk about a pattern that I see in both mental health and emotional healing. This is something, it's a pattern. I'm always looking for patterns. I'm always scanning for patterns. This is something that I have seen a lot within my personal life, conversations, friends, family groups, but also my clients. And I'm like, okay, like, this pattern has been present within my life, or within, just seeing that I'm kind of tracking. Like, once I find a pattern, I'm like, okay, this is something to talk about. And that is the way that so many people not only confuse, but kind of merge, or it's that messy meshing of responsibility turning into guilt and resentment. And how we can carry an emotional weight that we were actually never meant to hold. That subtle, almost invisible merging when responsibility turns, right? Like, again, I said, I'm always scanning for these patterns. So I'm seeing it in my sessions with clients. I'm having conversations with loved ones. And I find myself having the same conversations over and over again, hence that pattern recognition. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt guilty for choosing yourself? Even when you know you're doing what's best for you, you're still feeling guilty for doing it or choosing it. And what I've come to understand through my work, through my education, through my own personal experiences, through my own healings, and sitting with probably hundreds of people in this work, it's that it's not only the responsibility. It's how we allow that responsibility or that ownership or accountability to then be consumed by the guilt or resentments. So let me drop this for you, because you might be like, what are you talking about responsibility? Like, draw this out a little bit for me. Like, being responsible for your choices and decisions does not mean you are responsible for carrying someone else's emotional experience because of it. Responsibility doesn't equal emotional ownership of something external from you. Because somewhere along the way, let's just say an umbrella, let's call it societal conditioning, a lot of people, the collective, were taught something that was never questioned. That if someone else has a reaction to your choices or your truth, that you must have caused that reaction, hence taken responsibility for someone else's emotional response. That if someone feels discomfort because of your boundary, you are responsible for fixing that. Or that if someone is disappointed, that you've done something wrong. And slowly, without ever anyone explicitly saying it, that responsibility starts to get merged and entangled with that guilt, which then might create resentments. Like they almost fused together. So now the nervous system doesn't just register, I made a choice, I made a decision, I set a boundary, I spoke my truth. It may register as, I caused this instability, I am unsafe because someone is upset with me. And this is one way that people pleasing is born. From this conditioning. From a nervous system that learned early on that keeping the peace meant safety. That keeping other people okay was the only way to keep yourself okay. And over time, that wiring doesn't just stay in childhood or that societal conditioning. It follows you into adulthood, into your adult relationships, into your workplaces, your friendships, your leadership roles, your parenting, everywhere, because that was rooted within your nervous system. So you became someone who's very good at holding everything. You anticipate someone else's reactions. You soften and almost abandon your own truth so it doesn't land too hard and upset someone else. And that you carry emotional weight that isn't yours. And a lot of times, hopefully I'm bringing some conscious awareness to this. Maybe you're connecting some dots within your life. But a lot of times we don't even realize that we're doing it. Or maybe we do realize and we don't know why or how. And connecting those dots kind of brings that conscious awareness to it, right? Maybe it feels like, oh, I'm just being a good person. But inside, you're like hurting inside. And you're like, why am I so unhappy? Why am I so burnt out? Why am I feeling so disconnected from myself? Like there's that quiet cost to it that starts to get louder and louder and louder and louder, because underneath that identity, that people-pleasing identity, keeping the peace identity, there's that subtle self-abandonment happening. And that moment when your truth is getting more silenced and silenced and silenced so someone else doesn't feel uncomfortable, like your body is remembering that, even if your mind is trying to justify it. And what I see over and over and over again in my root cause therapy practice is that this pattern isn't necessarily about boundaries on the surface. Okay, it's deeper than that. It's always deeper than this. So like it might be that belief underneath, that nervous system belief of, if someone is upset with me, I am unsafe. If others are upset with me, it must be my fault. If my choices disappoint people, I must be doing something wrong. I need to hold this together. My worth is tied to how much I prevent discomfort for others. You see how that's all that self-abandonment? It's all that external. And this is often, usually, rooted in some sort of societal conditioning or childhood conditioning or emotional unpredictability or possible trauma or attachment wounds. Like, there's many layers to this. And this is just a beautiful example of how like mental health goes deeper than just that sign, that symptom, that diagnosis. It's what's living underneath. And when that belief is running in the background over and over and over, the guilt becomes automatic. And then you're stewing over the resentments that you're building, because your nervous system is interpreting emotional distance from self or disappointment of others as threatening. Insert continuing that loop over and over and over again. Your resentments are building, possibly not with yourself even, let alone, the external or the outside or other people, right? So even then, healthy responsibility and ownership might carry weight or feel wrong because it's starting to fuse together. Clear decisions might feel really heavy, like you have struggles with clarity. Or something so simple, that quote, like making mountains out of molehills, because your nervous system is fried in that capacity. Even aligned choices come with emotional costs. And this is where that distinction becomes really, really important to help you learn those past triggers and that past weight that you're carrying, to clear it. So then in your present life, that healthy responsibility doesn't feel wrong anymore, because you've helped enclose those loops and emotional patterns of the past. Those clear decisions don't feel heavy. They don't carry that weight. And your aligned decisions come in truth and confidence. And of course, we have ebbs and flows, and we're still going to have nervous system responses, and we're still going to feel stress and guilt and resentments. But in our present life, not because we're carrying things of our past baggage. So a couple examples of healthy responsibility might sound like, I made a choice. I set a boundary. I communicated this clearly. I will act in integrity. However, emotional over-responsibility might sound something like, I need to manage how everyone feels about this choice I made. Or I need to reduce their discomfort. Or I need to soften how I communicate this so the impact doesn't really upset someone else and no one's upset with me. You kind of hear and feel maybe even those differences. That energetic weight is completely different. They hold different charges. And we are not meant to hold other people's emotional responses. If we are making a decision or setting a boundary in integrity, in our truth, we can do it respectfully, right? It is not our responsibility to hold someone else's emotional response or disappointment, or adjust how you communicate it to soften the impact, soften the blow. And with that, yes, maybe to speak something respectfully. We might have to, of course, there's still healthy ways to communicate. But it's not our responsibility to hold how they respond. It's our responsibility in how we deliver that communication, absolutely. So it's not that their emotional response doesn't matter. It's not that, if they're upset, it still matters, but it's their responsibility to handle it, maybe to have a conversation with you about it, to say how they're upset. But it's that discernment in that it's not yours to carry. You can impact others without being responsible for managing their response. Communicating it or having a conversation about it, absolutely. But that's their responsibility. And for a lot of people, especially those who grew up in environments where emotional states were unpredictable, maybe their love was conditionally received, or they had to adapt to keep a connection that distinction, that discernment might not have been learned. So that guilt, that self-abandonment is a signal. And what I find really interesting is that guilt in these moments, it's not like, if you do feel these guilt in these moments, it's not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's just evidence that an old pattern is being activated. That's where that awareness comes in. And maybe a younger part of you is remembering a time when someone else's emotional reaction did require you to adjust or to take it back or to take responsibility to keep the peace. So now, even if you are safe, your body still is behaving in a way that is instilled in your system because that loop was never closed. And that is why the deeper work matters. And this, in my opinion, is where root cause therapy sits differently. Because we don't just work on the inside of, oh, you're being over-responsible. Or, oh, we're going to diagnose XYZ. Like, we go to where that responsibility or that imprint was originally formed. That moment where it did make sense for you because you needed to survive, because you were seeking that attachment, because you were seeking that love. That moment when your system learned, I stayed safe by managing others. And when that moment, that root is, that imprint is actually met emotionally, somatically, not just, intellectually, cognitively, when we actually meet it and emotionally, energetically, somatically also, that is when the shift happens. It starts to unwind. And we're able to rewire, to reparent possibly, to come back home to ourselves. That when you make a decision without taking responsibility for someone else's emotional adaptation to it, then we could have a healthy conversation that maybe, yes, it did upset someone else. But I stand firm in my boundary. I respect my boundary and I respect you also. Like, that is a shift. Not becoming someone who feels the guilt. Yes, of course, we could have empathy for someone else's response, but we don't internally feel the guilt and create that identity around it. So if this is landing somewhere familiar for you, you might already have the awareness. You might be aware that it's, living inside of you, but you're stuck in that cognitive awareness piece. And you need help, getting down into the body to come back home to yourself, to choose yourself. Like that's your next step. It's not in changing the behavior. It's meeting what is underneath it, allowing yourself to get to that root, to then unravel and close that loop, to allow your boundaries to feel safer, to stand more confidently in those boundaries, to trust yourself more, to maybe hold guilt differently. Your responsibility and ownership becomes healthier. Your emotional freedom and development expands. So a couple questions that you could ask yourself if you're kind of sitting maybe on this hump, or you're in that awareness of like that people pleasing or that self-abandonment, or maybe if just this episode is landing for you. A couple questions you could ask yourself is, do I feel guilty when I choose myself? Do I feel guilty when I set a boundary? Do I confuse disappointing others with harming them? Do I carry burdens that belong to systems, workplaces, family, or other relationships? In other words, am I carrying the emotional burden of others? And one to really sit with is allowing yourself to connect with your past, with your younger self. Where did I learn that other people's emotions were mine to manage? And root cause therapy can help uncover and heal these deeper beliefs, these emotional wounds, these imprints, and this nervous system conditioning behind these cycles, if you're seeking extra guidance in a safe container to be guided. Like, you're allowed to be responsible for your life without being responsible for everyone else's. And again, you could do that in a respectful way and holding your integrity. I'm sending you so much love. This was an eye-opening. I hope this episode landed for you in an eye-opening way. And maybe we'll do the same thing next week to kind of unravel a different type of pattern within mental health. This one, like I said, I just felt really called to share this week. So thank you for giving me that space to do so. So until next week, as always, simply be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. I'm sending my love and so much light.
Did you find this episode free or empowering? Please read my review. Tickle, boop.
Thank you for spending the sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. If this episode brought you closer to stepping into your energy of alignment, I'd love for you to leave a written review and share how this show has supported your journey. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps others find the space of transformation. And sharing it with someone who might need it spreads the ripple of healing even further. Be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with me and explore personalized healing sessions and mentorships to deepen your self-awakening journey. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.